Husband invited his ex to live with us without asking me. So I said no, but he told me I could leave if I had a problem. Now I've filed for divorce and she's bragging about sleeping with him. I, 27F, have been married to my husband Jacob, 28M, for almost 2 years now, but I think we might be headed for a divorce over something that happened 3 days ago. So, a couple of days ago, my husband brought home a friend of his from high school who happened to be a woman. This woman, Allison, was his friend back in high school, and when he brought her home, it was around evening time, so I figured that they'd just run into each other at the mall where Jacob had been and he brought her home for dinner or something. I welcomed her home and treated her like I would treat any other guest, but throughout dinner, I could just tell that there was something off about this person. The way she was talking to Jacob made me feel like they had a thing back in high school, and by the end of the evening, I just wanted her to leave, very honestly. Because she was making me uncomfortable with all her inside jokes with my husband and the way she would cozy up to him or try to touch him every couple of seconds. It literally felt like, for her, she would just find excuses to touch him on the arm or on the hand, and she was laughing extra hard at all his jokes, even the ones that were not very funny. So I guess people can tell why I wasn't comfortable with this woman, and after dessert was served, I figured that she would leave soon. I tried to be as pleasant as possible, despite how uncomfortable I was. But 2 hours passed, and at around 10, when she still hadn't left, I pulled Jacob into a corner and asked him what the hell was going on, because this was weird. Since she just wasn't leaving. And only when I asked, did Jacob tell me that he had actually invited her home because she had been evicted from her house because she hadn't paid rent for the past 4 months. And now apparently, she was going to spend the night at our house and probably the next couple of days as well, until she found another apartment that she could move into. He also told me that she hadn't run into him at the mall like I had believed. But in fact, they'd reconnected on social media and had been talking online for weeks before this, which is how he found out that she was looking for a place to live and offered to let her move in with us for the time being. I was obviously annoyed about it and asked him why he hadn't consulted with me before offering to let her move in. I also told him that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of her living with us in our home because she had made me feel uneasy throughout the evening with her odd behavior around Jacob. He tried to downplay it and told me that I was just being crazy, that he was only helping out a friend in need, but I told him that I wanted her to leave and I wasn't going to put up with this. I insisted that he talk to her and tell her to go, but he told me that he had already promised her and he couldn't break her heart this way. Apparently, all her stuff was in the car and she had moved out of her apartment today itself. He had helped her move out and he couldn't just tell her that it wasn't happening. He was acting really weird and squirrely, so I asked him to be honest with me and tell me who this Allison was. And as it turns out, I've been right all along about her having a thing with Jacob back in high school, because he confessed that she was actually his ex-girlfriend from when he was in his senior year and they'd broken up just because he had to leave for college. I kind of freaked out at him when he told me that because the last thing that I wanted was for his ex-girlfriend to live with us, especially when it felt like she still had a thing for him. He promised me that he and Allison were over, and had been over for a long time, but that did nothing about my insecurity. I told him that I wanted out and I wanted her out right away. I was pretty pissed off and I sounded like it too. I expected him to take me seriously, but instead, he turned around and told me that he wasn't kicking her out, and if I had a problem with Allison living with us, then I could leave instead. He told me that he was just trying to help out a friend in need, and if I was so insecure that I couldn't even handle that, then I was the problem here and I should go. After saying that, he walked out of the room and left me alone in the bedroom. I was shocked that he was choosing Allison over me, his wife of 2 years. We'd even been in a relationship for almost 3 years before we got married, so I think I should be a lot more important to him than some girl he dated in high school for a year before he left for college. I was stunned after he told me to leave and had nothing to say for a couple of seconds. When I went back into the living room, I saw that he was sitting on the couch beside Allison and they were laughing at some sitcom that was playing on the TV. Allison even had the audacity to tell me to come sit beside them, and then she scooted over so that she'd be sitting really close to Jacob and I would have to sit beside her while she cozied up to my husband. After she said that, I left and went back into the bedroom, packed some of my stuff in a bag, and walked out into the living room. I didn't even care that Allison was right there. I told Jacob that he could either kick her out immediately and we could talk about this, or I would be leaving. He said nothing and just pursed his lips and chose to look the other way while Allison got up and started speaking to me in a really falsely sweet voice and told me that she didn't intend to cause any problems. That she was just an old friend and that's how it was going to be, and then she turned around and asked Jacob, "Right, Jake?" Now I know that Jacob hates it when people call him Jake, but when Allison said it, he didn't seem to have any problem with that. I just sighed and walked out of the door and slammed it shut behind me as loudly as I could. Jacob didn't even chase me or try to stop me, and of course, neither did Allison, because this is obviously what she wanted all along. It was a little creepy, but once I was out of the door, I decided to linger and check out what was going to happen inside the living room once I was gone. I know it seems crazy, but I really felt in my gut that this was something I had to do. And lucky for me that I did, because I could peek through the curtain since we never really shut them entirely. And I saw that as soon as I had left, Alice and Jacob sat side by side and I could barely hear it, but they were having some conversation which was definitely about me. Jacob looked upset, and after a while, to my shock, Jacob laid down and rested his head on Allison's lap where she stroked his hair. I was furious when I saw that, and in the heat of the moment, I decided to take out my phone and click a picture of the two of them in that position. They couldn't see me, but I could see them, and I made sure that I got an angle where both their faces would be visible in the picture. When I was done clicking the picture, I decided that I didn't need to stick around anymore and walked all the way to a friend's house. I could have taken my car, but I really didn't want to drive, especially when I was in such a terrible mood. I honestly just wanted to walk and think about what I'd just seen. My blood was boiling and I felt like I just had to do something to get back at Jacob for what he was doing to me. So before I knocked on my friend's door, I decided to go online and post the pictures that I'd taken, with a caption that just said cheater and nothing else. After I was done posting, I knocked on my friend's door and she let me in. She had just checked her social media and she asked me what the heck my post was about as soon as she saw me. Once I entered the living room, I explained the story to her once I was sitting on the couch and she told me that I'd gone a little too far in dealing with this because already, the comments are full of hate towards Allison and Jacob. She told me that while she agreed that Jacob needed to be called out, posting a personal picture of them that was so intimate was probably not the best way to go about the situation and I could also get into legal trouble for it if it actually came down to that. I heard her out and it actually made a lot of sense, what she was saying, so I decided to go ahead and delete the image from my account. But even after I took down the post, several people continued to text me to put it back up, because they thought that that was exactly what Jacob deserved. I was touched that so many people were on my side, but I got a harsh reality check when my friend told me that they didn't really care about my marriage or my relationship with Jacob, but they only cared about the gossip that they were going to get out of this. So I needed to stay out of the drama and ignore the people who were texting me because they only cared about all the drama that was going to come out of this, not about my emotional well-being. She was right, so I decided to turn off my phone for a while and do something to distract myself. It was already pretty late at night when I'd shown up at my friend's place, so after a while, I just went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, my friend told me that Jacob was waiting for me outside in the living room. He'd turned up just a couple of minutes before I woke up and even though my friend had tried to send him back home, he refused to leave without seeing me first. I thought that he was here to apologize and I was already prepared to turn him down and reject his apology because I wasn't feeling particularly forgiving at the time. But when I went out into the living room, ready with my speech, I was in for a shock when the first words that came out of Jacob's mouth weren't "I'm sorry, but are you insane? And what the heck were you even thinking?" I knew that he must be pissed about my post the previous night, but he seemed more than pissed off, he seemed hysterical and very upset. It all finally made sense when he told me that someone had sent that picture to his parents and now they were refusing to speak to him, which was bad for him because he had been planning to quit his job and start his own business. He needed his father's money for that.